Good morning, everyone. The title of today's video is 3 Things That Will Kill Your Company Culture. So let's take a look at those 3 things right away. The first one is entitled managers. The second one is company cliques, internal company cliques. And the third one is functional silos within your company. So let's get started with number 1, and that is entitled managers. Give you a little background. Just earlier on, I was out speaking with a company that had a day of celebration for their employees. It was a day that was titled Invest in Yourselves. And I was asked to come in and speak and give them a little bit of the insight that I have learned over my 38 years of sales management and sales consulting experience. And as I sat there and I looked and I listened before my time, I watched these managers in this company be very open and be very honest and be very direct and receive information. The conversations that went on before my time to speak to this group weren't a boss talking to a subordinate. It was a leader, a manager who clearly was titled as a manager, offering information, asking for questions, and having exchanges of information with various people in the group. It was a refreshing thing to see. And why do I say this? It's because managers who manage through the entitlement of their title will kill your company culture. Those are the people who are going to say, I'm the boss, you do what I tell you to do, and that's all the explanation you need. Well, that worked when I first started working for a major corporation, Johnson & Johnson, in the early 1980s. The boss was the boss, and my boss took the same kind of direction from his boss. That's how it worked. It flowed down and you just passed it on. And in that time, when I was a young salesperson, I got that information passed down through those different layers, and I was given my direction, and I went out and I tried to pass along information and tips and programs to my customers. I tried to work that lesson that had come down into my sales presentations and convince my customers to do what the company had directed me to do. Well, in today's culture, it's much less like that, in my opinion. When I was in the Chicago company Outer Circle, it was totally different than that. Managers managed, there's no doubt. Managers were in charge of decision making, and they had to continue to be managers. But they managed with a totally different mindset. They managed from the idea of, I have information, I'm going to give this information to you. I want you to tell me what you think about it, and I want us to discuss it, because if we discuss it, we might leave this conversation with an even better idea. You'll have more information, I'll have more information, and ultimately, who's going to benefit from that? Your customers, your other employees, managers, and the company as a whole will benefit from those kinds of exchanges. If you are a business owner and you have managers who manage by their titles, it's going to be a difficult thing for you to change. There may be an ultimatum that has to happen before anything changes. Managers who feel this way to begin with don't often relish giving up that control and that power. It's just not the nature of that type of manager. It's a secure thing to be the boss. It's not quite as secure when you're a manager who asks for information, who takes that information back, disseminates it, and maybe will make an adjustment to their entire plan. That's what you call an active manager, and a manager who understands the bigger picture in your company. Now let's talk about number 2. And the number 2 culture killer is inner office, or anywhere in your company, cliques. Now, I've been in a lot of sales forces, and a lot of larger sales forces definitely had cliques within them. It was the group that talked about the real plan or talked about what they thought and where they thought things were going to go. Those things are very real. It's just exactly like having an office setting, which, yes, I have worked in, have managed within. You will have different cliques at time. Now, let's think about it. Cliques are going to exist because people are people. They're human beings. They are going to gravitate to other people that they like, they feel more comfortable with than others. That's just the way things are. But when it comes to that clique within your company, having not so much power, but influence. When they have influence, it really transcends power because the influence can be very subtle or it can be very direct over a very large area. Cliques prevent the open and honest exchange of ideas. Cliques don't get everyone involved, and they typically have an idea that says, I'll bully that person because I've got the group behind me. That's the kind of thing that absolutely breaks down a positive culture within a company right away. If you see those things, you have to get your hands around them. You have to bring your managers, and I'm talking about the managers who understand the program you're in, who want to manage proactively and listen. You've got to get them involved in that, and they've got to address it. Maybe they've just got to sit down with a group of people or sit down with individual people. Remember, managers have to manage. No matter what your culture is, your managers are still running a certain level of the business because it's very simple. They have information and they oversee a larger number of people. You just don't want your management level to follow the militaristic type of management that says, you see this rank on my sleeve? Don't ask me a question, do what I tell you. That's the exact opposite of managers you want to have managing anything, but especially when you want to start trying to take away the influence, which is the power of cliques within your company. Now, the third thing is also very important, and it's an oldie. It's a throwback, or maybe to my generation in the early days of any sort of cultural conversation about a company. Back when there was the first inkling of what should a company's environment, that place the employees work, be about. And that third thing that is a culture killer is the good old functional silo. Very simple to understand. You have a group of people who are functioning within their department, within their group, or within their area. Salespeople can very often become functional silos. Let's say you have a remote sales force and they're out in the field and they feel isolated already. They're away from the instant information. They have to get emails or phone calls or catch up with things as they break. They're really not connected to the positiveness, if you have it, of your culture inside your building. They can tend to get very much into a functional silo. Maybe a salesperson says, hey, calls another one and says, hey, I didn't really understand what the marketing guy was talking about. He was really trying to tell me I didn't know what I was doing. So you can see how that misinterpretation or that little bit of irritation over something could begin a whole different level of conversation within that sales unit's functional silo. Maybe it's just a pure misunderstanding. Maybe the production manager or maybe the director of production or operations says, we're not doing that. Maybe he just says it casually in a meeting or in a call, and the sales force in their silo go back and hold a separate meeting to talk about how they're getting screwed over by the operations department. You want to make sure that you do not let those things go. Functional silos just break up all the rhythm that you may have within a growing, maybe it's a culture that's growing more positive in your internal area, your offices inside. And a functional silo outside of that can certainly become an issue and it can start to impact other departments. But typically, I think the functional silos are inner office. The other thing is they can literally just become an operation on their own. They can become this little island that begins to stop thinking about their impact as it goes through the company. When you have that, they are thinking of ideas that fit just in their world, and they're prioritizing those ideas for their world. It is their function, and they're in that closed-in silo, and that's limiting their reach and limiting their perception and understanding of maybe the main company goals, or certainly broader company goals. These three things can grow exponentially. They can get out of hand right away, and they are not easy things to tackle. And often when I'm talking about things like this, people will say, okay, which one of those should I prioritize? Well, you've got to really and truly prioritize all of them because they're equally, I think, destructive over the longer term. But as a priority, if you said you've got to give me a priority of these three, it depends on what you want as the owner. Maybe you're the founder of a business. Maybe it's a medium-sized business or a very small business. You, as the decision maker, as the final voice of authority, you have to decide if you want your managers to manage militaristic style, or if you want them to manage with a positive and an open cultural style. When you make that choice, you've got to take the first step. You have to go to each of your managers. Maybe it's 2, maybe it's 1, or maybe it's 10. And you have to make the decision to get your point about how you want them to manage driven home. Because if you don't, everything else you try to do is not going to be as successful as it should be and most definitely could be. The priority of these three would definitely be getting your managers all on the same page and having them manage with an open and encouraging type of management style. These things are never going to be easy. They're never going to be things that don't just slip up on you sometimes unless you've got your eyes really on your company at all times and you're very focused on the environment your employees work in. And I'll tell you one other thing as an addition to this list here, a positive. If you address these three things, you will be giving your employees something much more valuable than a raise or a bonus, in my opinion. Now, depending on their financial status, I guess that could be not true. But in my experience, when people have a culture-based environment, and I mean positive culture-based environment, they love coming to work. And they work harder because they feel like they really and truly are the company. They're people who are making the company better. And no, this is not a pipe dream. I'm not just sitting here and dreaming this stuff up. I have worked in the opposite of that positive environment, and I've worked in the greatest company environment I think there's ever been, certainly in my experience and all the experiences I've ever heard of. And that was in our small Chicago outer circle products principled culture. And down the road, we're going to examine those. We're going to look at those principles. It's coming up, but we got to plan that well because it's 7 principles we've got to examine. So next week, I'll give you a little bit of a hint about what we're going to talk about here on Sid Mickle Consulting. And let me do a little precursor to that. We are not offering consulting services. We are not looking to become your consultant. We are offering advice. Sid Mickle Consulting is the name of the advice channel here on YouTube. We are trying to give information out that will help you. And we focus an awful lot of our attention on employee relations, department interactions, and the environment or the culture inside your company. So next week, we're going to delve into maybe the worst business disaster of maybe modern times, most recent times for sure. And what I'm talking about is the 1982 Tylenol tampering case. And that was the first case that took place in Chicago. And yes, I was a part of that. And I think it's a very good conversation to have. So next week, our video is going to be about Tylenol tampering #1. Hope you'll tune back in. I also hope that today's conversation will give you some confidence to really take a close look at your company's environment and think about adjustments to your culture in these 3 specific ways. So until we get back together in a week or so, I hope you all have a great week. Take care. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.